last class we stopped at the sutra. Patanjali says, Yoganga Nushtad Ashuddhikshaye Jnana Diptihi Aviveka Khyāti. So why is, okay, my camera has been off. Okay, now you see me. So by the sustained practice of the limbs of yoga, the impurities are destroyed. So it's an important thing. The lamp of wisdom is lit, which leads to discriminative direct knowledge. And in the mythology, itihasas, the example that is used to illustrate this is the Samudra Mathanam, which is the churning of the Shira Sagaram, the ocean of milk. So the entire yoga practice by itself doesn't create wisdom. Yoga practice primarily removes impurity. So this is called Vyoga Karanam. Vyoga means separation. Karana is cause. Vyoga Karana means cause by separation. Vyasa illustrates this quite extensively. Yoga practice removes impurity, and then wisdom naturally arises because of the purity of the mind. This is the sattva guna. So the mind by nature it is sattvic, but because of all this baggage, karma, imprints, kleshas, it becomes it deviates from sattva to rajas and tamas, and yoga restores this. So this is yoga karanam. So the example that is given is the Samudra Mathanam. So the limbs of yoga, yama and niyama, they destroy the external impurities, gross sins and bad habits. Asana and pranayama, they destroy the asana and pranayama, they destroy the internal impurities, distraction, lethargy, everything. Okay, let me just make sure everybody is in. Okay. So let's see the Samudra Mathanam. This is, of course, one of the most famous stories. And we have one person to thank for all these stories, and that is Rishi Durvasa. So Durvasa, if we have one person primarily we have to thank for these stories, it is Rishi Durvasa. Why? Do you know? Can anybody say why? Why Rishi Durvasa is responsible for a lot of stories? So the name Durvasa, he's a rishi, he's a sage. Anybody wants to take a guess? Sumitra?
Maybe he gets angry and curses all the
Yes,
time.
that's the reason. Durvasati means one who's very difficult to live with. So Durvasa incidentally is considered a amsha of Shiva's destructive energy, and he is very easy. And he, the more angry he gets, more power he gets, and he gives curses. And we'll see it's Vak Siddhi when people who have done a lot of tapas and they are they practice satya, which is truthfulness, their speech will take effect. And because of this, he curse things will come true. And in this case, what happens is that he curses Indra. Indra loses his power, and all the people, the devas in his kingdom, they become weak. They feel devoid of their tejas. So Bhagavan Vishnu tells him to churn the ocean of milk, Kshiras Sagaram, to obtain nectar, so that they are restored of their divine nature, their radiance. Now, all these stories are profoundly symbolic. None of these stories are just stories that are told for some loose moral concept, or no, it's not to it's not a very what can I say, it's not a cliche. They have profound symbolisms behind. So we'll see some of this. You might have heard the story, but probably you don't know about the depth of the symbolisms. So the most famous allegory for this removing the impurities is the Samudra Mathanam, as I told you. In here, the practice of yoga is the churning. You're doing this action. The removal and the impurity is the poison. We'll see the poison that will come out. And then the emergence of wisdom is akin to this nectar. Okay, this is the Samudra Mathanam, churning of the ocean of milk. Shira Sagaram. Shira means milk. Sagar is ocean, the ocean of milk. So the story is the Devas. Devas represents, I said they're not like gods, they represent in us also the forces of light, Sattva Guna. And Asuras represent the Tamo, primarily Tamo, and some Rajoguna. They, Asuras, have the, call it demonic nature in us. So the Devas and the Asuras agree to churn the milky ocean. So the Devas and Asuras are basically symbolisms of our divine and demonic natures. We all have both of them. So they agree to churn the milky ocean to obtain Amrita. Why did they also agree? Because the Devas, they were by themselves not strong. So Bhagavan Vishnu says, ask the help of the Asuras also to churn. So the Devas went and told Asuras, hey, we'll give you a share of the nectar that will come out. Please help us churn. So they agreed, and they started churning. So, and the Amrita represents the nectar of immortality. What is nectar of immortality? What is that a symbolism for? Anybody wants to say?
Moksha?
Yes, it is knowledge leading to moksha, liberation. And they use the Mount Mandara, the great mountain Mandara, to churn. And what does Mandara represent, you think? So in this picture, you see them churning with what does a mountain stand for? Achalam. Mountain is called Achalam, which means unmovable. So what do you think it symbolizes?
Dharma?
No, it symbolizes concentration of the mind.
Okay, Dharma.
Unmoving mind. So Achalo is always a mountain is used like the mind steady state. And the rod, and people typically use a churning rod. Here they use Vasuki, the serpent. It represents the deep desire for liberation, the energy as the rope, the churning rope. The churning itself represents the yoga anga anushtana. So the yoga anga anushtanam is a sustained practice. Anu means to follow. So essentially what it means is keep following doing the practice, sustained practice. So yoga anga anushtana is the sustained practice. The first, what comes? Does the nectar come right away? No. So you see, the first thing that comes is poison. And that's from the Vasuki, which is huffing and puffing. Vasuki and Adisesha, they're both brothers. Vasuki is shown as a poisonous serpent. Adisesha is shown as this big, luxurious pillow. So Vasuki is what Shiva wears around the neck. It's like a poisonous serpent, whereas Adisesha is typically represented as like a python, like with 1,000 heads, like a bed, nice, soft, squishy bed for Bhagavan Vishnu. And they begin churning intensely. Vasuki was huffing and puffing, and it's spitting poison. And we saw this story before. Aparamrishtaha, Shiva comes and takes the poison. Because Shiva is Aparamrishtaha, means unaffected by any of the worldly struggles. So in the example of Ishvara, if you remember, Klesha Kala Aparamrishtaha Purusha Vishesha Ishvaraha. So Shiva is representative of the supreme Ishvara, who can take anything and not be affected. So he comes and swallows the poison. This poison represents the impurities buried deep in our subconscious. When you start yoga or meditation, often poison comes up first. Old traumas, anger, restlessness. So even for people who there's now meditations use mindfulness, they call it, used as a therapy. And there it is very common for first a lot of anger or a lot of these negative feelings will come out. And that's the process of cleansing. Because you were so desensitized, you're hiding everything. When you start going in, the first thing that you see is all the hidden stuff, and they start coming out. Lord Shiva had to consume the poison to save them, representing the need for detachment. Ishvara, this is Ishvara Pranidhana. Then come the gems. So nectar doesn't come first. Then comes the gems. That's the second picture that you see. So what all come? You see, yeah, flying horse, Uchaishvrava. Then you see a cow, that is Kamadhenu. Kama is desire, Denu means giver, giver of desire. So this Kamadhenu was given to Vasishta. Remember that story? Vishwamitra tries to take the cow by force from Vasishta, and he's not successful. So then comes a magical elephant, Airavatar, which is given to Indra as his vehicle. Then comes the perfect woman, and that is the goddess of wealth, Lakshmi. And the perfect woman needs the perfect man, Purusha Uttama, and she becomes the wife of Bhagavan Vishnu. So these represents Jnana Deeptihi, the flashes of brilliance, powers, insights that come to a yogi. These are all the siddhis. The devas were tempted to stop and enjoy this, but Bhagavan tells, keep going, keep churning. So the important message here is that you have to go past the siddhis. Okay. All right. Okay.
Anna, what does the snake represent again? I didn't.
Snake represents that's the one that you use to churn. It represents the energy, the desire to get the knowledge. So you need to have like a tivra mumukshutvam, they call it, which is a deep desire to be free. That is that snake. Okay, so it's all symbolisms. Finally, so we'll see in the third chapter also, Patanjali talks about siddhis. We'll see a lot of siddhis. That'll be a fun chapter. And he finally says, Te samadau upasarga vyuttane siddhayaha. These are obstacles to samadhi. Samadau upasarga vyuttane siddhayaha. In this material world, they're considered great superpowers, but they're obstacles to samadhi. So Bhagavan tells, don't stop with all these gifts, go past. So these are the siddhis. And then finally comes the nectar. Dhanvantri, the great divine physician, you see, is considered avatara of Bhagavan Vishnu. He comes, is dark in color, just like Bhagavan Vishnu, and he holds the pot of Amrita. And then a lot of story comes. But this is the Viveka Khyāti, unwavering discernment. Drinking this makes one mortal, because with Viveka Khyāti, you can achieve liberation or Kaivalya. So the lesson is, just as the ocean had to be churned to release the nectar, the mind must be churned by the 8 limbs of yoga. The process first pushes off the dirt, the poison, then reveals the lower knowledge, the gems, all these things. We'll see all the gems in the limbs, ahimsa, because of ahimsa. Ahimsa pratishtayam tatsannitau vairatyagaha. Beings lose their violence in the presence of one established in ahimsa. And finally, it results in supreme realization of the self. That is what the nectar represents. Okay, so that is the story. So